欢迎来到分论坛，全球视角，通过新教育模式培养未来技能。有请嘉宾上台。Welcome to the Future Skills Through Novel Education Models Subforum. Let's welcome our speakers onto the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Ni hao. My name is Benjamin Vedrenne-Cloquet. You can call me Ben. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm CEO of EdTechX Holdings. And during this session, we're going to have two things. The first one, a short keynote called Learning is the New Tech. And then we'll have a panel on future skills and new education models. So before I start, I wanted to introduce what we do and what I do, and we're headquartered in London. And the best way to describe what we do is say that we build the ecosystem. And for this, we do three things. The first things we really do is we organize events around the world, in Europe mostly, but also in Africa, in US, in China, and we bring the ecosystem together. We bring investors, entrepreneurs, disruptors, and big strategic investors. And we disseminate insight and knowledge, and we also create investment opportunities. The other things we are doing is we have a firm that helps, called IBIS Capital, that helps to raise capital and do M&A for EdTech companies. For example, we recently raised $50 million for a business called Future Learn, which is the equivalent of Coursera in the UK. And the last thing we do, we also have an investment vehicle, which I'm CEO of, which is called EdTechX Holdings, which IPO'd on NASDAQ last year in October. And basically, this vehicle is meant to do acquisition in EdTech and education. We are very bullish on education because we believe education is basically a triple opportunity. If you look at most sectors, most industries, they all go through a sequential phase, right? They first consolidate among players, then they globalize, and then they get disrupted by digitization. What's unique about education is that this is happening simultaneously. We have consolidation, globalization, and digitization happening at the same time, and that's why we think it's unique. And that's why we like it, and that's why we want to invest in it. Speaking about investment, the reason why I'm happy to be here is because China actually dominates investment in education technology. And it's roughly half of the investment in venture capital investment in the world done by China, then US, far behind, and then Asia, non-China, and then Europe, where I'm coming from, which is a very small portion of the investment. And I think that China is right to invest massively in education technology because if you think of it, if you take a very long view, EdTech and more broadly, digital learning and deep learning and artificial intelligence are about to become the main economic driver of the 21st century. If you take a very long view, the pre-industrial economy was about cultivation and extraction to maximize food and resources. The industrial economy was about manufacturing and services to maximize consumption and profit. And the knowledge economy is about learning and artificial intelligence to maximize human potential. So after demography, after technology, learning is the new tech, and learning is the main economic driver of the 21st century. And that's a massive engine of growth, because according to McKinsey, learning and AI are going to contribute to the global GDP, $13 trillion by 2030. $13 trillion, that's the equivalent of the GDP of China, okay? Learning is the new tech as well, because when you look at, for example, the most popular courses on Coursera, which is one of the largest MOOC platforms in the world, machine learning, neural network, deep learning, artificial intelligence, all those are the top courses ahead of blockchain, cybersecurity, English, and finance. So yes, learning is the new tech. It's also becoming a very hot topic in companies. You have got this quote from someone from the Manpower Group. I really believe the CEO needs to become the chief learning officer of their company. And I don't think CEOs spend enough time thinking about learning in their organization. What is interesting about this quote is that if you go back 10 years ago, you could have had the same quote with technology, right? 10 years ago, people were all about technology and CTOs. Right now, when you talk to new companies, they pride themselves in saying we're not a technology company, but we're a learning company or a knowledge company. So the semantic is shifting, and I think that's very telling. Another thing is AI in education is fast growing, right? What we call deep learning in education. It's a 900 million market, and it's going to be increased by 10x by 2030. So all those three things are telling me and telling us that yes, learning is the new tech, and that we're entering a new wave of disruption in education technology. When I started to cover the sector in 2012 and 2013, we were at a phase, what I call the Spotify moment of education, where it was about light tech, using just digital technologies to disseminate and digitize content. Now, we are entering into a phase that is a much deeper disruption, called what I call a genomics moment of education, where we use deep tech, we use neuroscience, we use artificial intelligence to build new disruptive companies. And there are already examples of those companies, and they tend to focus on two things. One is what we call personalization and predictive analytics, which allows to, at scale and at low cost, to personalize content and predict what will be the outcome, right? And so there are examples of companies here. One is a Swedish company called Sana Labs that you should have a look at, and another one is Century Tech, based in the UK. Another focus of those AI and deep learning companies are on engagement and behavior in learning environment. We know that motivation and drive for learning predict outcome. The more motivated you are for learning, the best behavior you have for learning, the better are your outcomes, right? And so there are companies that are focusing on this. One is ClassChart in the UK. What they do is that they get data from students and teachers to create smart learning, class charts, class plans. So put the best students next to the average students and create, good learning environment. There is another company in China called Face++, which is basically capturing faces and emotional response to learning, and is able to predict the level of engagement for learning. So those are examples of AI in education and deep learning. But to really understand the future of education, we need to look elsewhere. And we need to look in the future of work and production. Because for centuries, how we learn has been driven by what the workplace needs. And currently, the situation is the following. The situation is there is a huge skill gap, right? Global skill gap, again, of $30 trillion. And there are two responses to this. The first response is a quick fix, what we call the upskilling urgency. The upskilling urgency is using digital technology to disseminate content and make it more fluid, more accessible. Is also cutting content into smaller forms, what we call bite size, so that it becomes easier to assimilate it. And it's a lot about being compliance driven as well, where we force people to learn because we are worried about their accelerated obsolescence. That's an upskilling urgency. That's the quick fix. That's what's happening now. Another manifestation of the upskilling urgency is the growth of the freelance workforce. We observe that the freelance workforce is growing 3 times faster than normal workforce. Why? Because freelance workers have more time to reskill. They reskill between jobs, so they become more employable and more demanded by companies. But those two approaches are a quick fix solution. It's not a long-term solution. And so there is a systemic fix and a longer-term solution, which we call upskilling fluidity, and that involves deep learning and what we call cobots. Deep learning, the best way to explain this is if you think of a software, before people were putting knowledge into a software, and the software was basically replicating this knowledge. With deep learning, machines are using data to train themselves. Okay, so that creates much more fluidity. That creates much more efficiency. And what's important is that it's experiential data as well. So, in a way, we are entering a third wave of tech disruption. Someone said Mark Anderson says software is eating the world, right? So if you think of the three waves of disruption, we had PC and software that impacted database, publishing and accounting, then internet, and then deep learning that impacts all the industries. And so that's why we think that learning is the new tech. We also see the emergence in the workplace of what we call cobots that are not industrial robots, but that are robots that are basically interacting with humans. And that becomes a big trend. There are robots that are basically capturing experiences with human workers that are designed to work with human workers. And that's a very new trend. They represent right now 2% of the industrial robots. They will represent, according to Gartner, 90% by 2025. So that's a big shift. And beyond the cobots, we have another emergence that is very interesting, what we call digital twins. Digital twins is the replica of factories, so digital factories and digital workers to replicate and make simulations. So for example, if you are an engine factory, you could replicate digitally a real factory with real workers, but in digital world, run them for 10,000, a million hours, and see what are the outcomes. And by doing those things, you basically accumulate more data and more learning experience. So digital twins are emerging in the manufacturing world, but we start to think that there could be, if that works, sorry, there could be some application for us as learner. And there is one company that wants to create a digital twin for each of us, for each individual, each learner. And so I'll give you an example here. This company is called Oben, and it's a company that uses AI, neuroscience, and blockchain. And basically, they want to create digital twins for everyone. So I'm going to put now a video. If we can get the sound up, please.
Artificial intelligence technology. At Nikhil's personal AI, I enable Nikhil to spend more time with his wife and 3 kids, enjoy a nice hike, or go off-roading. 你好，我是尼克尔，来自虚拟世界。我长得帅，能唱歌，能跳舞，还会说英文。皆さん、こんにちは。ごきげん、いかがですか？오늘 내가 눈앞에서 보는 테크놀로지를 소개하겠습니다. 있습니다.
So what's interesting here, how do I get? Okay, let me go back to this. Okay, so what's interesting here is that the digital twin learned the voice of the real guy by listening to him, okay? And then the digital twins learn Chinese and Japanese through a machine. So you have a human-to-machine interaction to create the voice, and then you have a machine-to-machine interaction to create the language. So that illustrates how a digital twin can expand learning. And that's quite disruptive. And some people might think that it's just science fiction, but actually, it's already happening because we are creating every day digital fragment of our own personality. Social media is doing this, government are capturing data, healthcare system, for example, banking systems are capturing data for our digital selves. So those twins are being built, and AI and education are no exception. So, in a way, we are reaching a new phase of human evolution. After having spent centuries hunting for money and hunting for food, we are now hunting for knowledge, and we want to do this with the help of digital twins or digital buddy. So that's the rise of the Homo eruditus and its digital twin. I don't know how you translate this in Chinese, but hopefully you get the picture. And what's coming up is a new form of collaboration between humans who are going to be the soft skill experts and also AI and digital twin. And what's fascinating about those two things is that it's the collaboration or the collaboration between two forms of intelligence, human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And what's interesting is, this is not entirely virtual, it's not entirely digital, it's still very much experiential. So it's more learning, deeper learning through more experience and more data shared between humans and machine. So in a way, it's a new form of humanity that combines artificial intelligence and humans. So thank you very much. That was an introduction. I hope you're convinced that learning is the new tech. And we're now going to have a panel about future skills and new forms of education. So thank you very much. So we are starting our panel on future skill through novel education models. And I would like to welcome our three panelists. And what I'm just going to do first is ask you to introduce yourself briefly, who you are, and what you do. And if we can start with you, Andre.
Oh, I don't know. Should I have to press something here?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. So my name is Nudelman. I'm from Brazil, but I live in Canada for almost 20 years. And I'm an investor in education. Have some companies, and the last company we acquired is called Digital Media Academy, and is in Silicon Valley. And we do summer camp in technology for children from 9 to 17 years old. And we do that at University of Stanford, Harvard, New York University, University of Chicago, 16 universities. And also we offer schools a program called Certified Schools that is in our website, and we are going to talk about later. Thank you.
Okay, Aditya?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aditya Malik. I run a company called Talentedge. We are based out of India, and we work with all the top Ivy League colleges and universities in India to offer online courses for working professionals. So pretty much like Coursera for India. And you know, as like China, India has also fairly large working population and people who are interested in upskilling themselves from time to time. So you know, we get fairly large number of students, not students, but working professionals applying to us. Almost 50,000-60,000 of them apply to us every month, and then we go through the process of selecting them and taking them through multiple courses across 60 different topics running across the year. Thank you.
Hi, ni hao. I'm Ethan Fieldman. I'm the CEO and founder of Talentedge. We work with over 200 universities in the United States and over 1 million students, and we provide bite-sized chunks of video tutoring for various subjects in math and science and business courses. We also supply the math curriculum for many school districts across the US, so middle school and high school math from 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds.
Thank you. So the topic of the panel is future skills through novel education models. So let me ask with this opening question, why do we need to focus on future skills? What's the problem? What are we trying to solve here? If you want to start, Ethan, maybe.
Sure. So I think in 2016, the World Economic Forum said that 65% of all students entering primary school will have a job that doesn't exist right now, right? So there's the answer right there. I'll also say that college is not, unfortunately, very much aligned with skills, right? And we know that because over 40% of students in two-year colleges in the United States will not finish their degree, right? And we have $1.6 trillion of student debt right now in the United States. So clearly the alignment between what students are expecting, which is getting a good job, and what a college and university is providing, which is subject matter mastery, are just not in line. And so we've got to do something about that. And whether it's working with the traditional schools to be more business-focused, employability-focused, or whether it's new models that go outside of the school system, certainly something has to be done.
Okay. What's your view on this?
So from a higher education perspective, one of the things we are seeing across many developing countries and in a market like India and a couple of other countries is that the shortage of faculty, a good faculty or a good teacher, is a big problem to solve. There exists enough infrastructure in terms of the physical infrastructure of classroom, colleges, etc., but there are not good teachers who can teach them. And you know, if developing countries target a gross enrollment ratio, which is to cross 50%, I'm not even talking, 80, 90%, we will need exceedingly good teachers. So there is no other way but to make sure that we impart online education. That's point number one. The point number two is that, you know, as Benjamin was talking in his keynote, the vanilla online education is passé. The key is how do we engage with students? Whether it is using a digital twin, as he was talking about, or whether it is using AI, or whether it's using any other technology-driven method. The key is how do we engage and makes the experience of learning uplifting. And last but not the least is the fact that the population or the workers of today, they are realizing, as Ethan was mentioning, that in 26 years from now, jobs will not be very different. I will say that the workers of today are realizing that if within 5 years they do not continuously upskill themselves, they will be out of the jobs. There'll be somebody else replacing them. And all that points to the same point that it has to have a future-focused skills, a new way of teaching, and new way of learning.
Okay. Andre, your view? What's the problem?
Well, the problem is clear. So there is a disconnection between the present and the future. So, and this disconnection, how to fix? Because everybody knows why it's disconnected. But what first thing you have I call three parallels or three lines. One line is the most important one is the student. So we are talking about preparing students for the future. The top line is the job market. We don't even know if there will be job market. Maybe only for the twins. So the predictions go from the very bright future to a very dark future. So we don't really know. What we know is that in between the students and what's going to happen with the market are the entities and people responsible to prepare these students for the market. That are schools that still exist, and there are companies and governments and entities and not-for-profits that are trying to provide the skills that will be necessary for a completely uncertain future. So just to finalize, it's a little bit harder to adjust the middle tier to train the lower tier when we don't have a clear perspective of what's going to happen. Some people prefer to teach technology. That maybe the twins will be more capable of learning, but for sure the soft skills, interpersonal skills, and adaptational skills are something that I believe will be more required because everything will change very fast.
So that's an interesting point because you say, Ethan, earlier that 60%, I forgot what was the statistic, but 60% of the new graduates will basically have to be ready for a job that doesn't exist. So if you don't know what the end goal is, you don't know what the skills that are going to be needed, how do you train today? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. 65% is what they say, but it's a prediction. So a couple things. So first of all, you mentioned the freelance workforce, right? I'm not aware right now of any college in America, at least in America, maybe across the world, that has a course on how to be a freelancer, right? How to send an invoice, right? QuickBooks, FreshBooks, legal, management, HR. I mean, there's so many things involved in being your own boss, right? And so that's number one, is people have to understand the new gig economy, the workforce of freelancers and all of that. Number two is the schools and the programs have to be nimble, right? They have to change quickly because we don't know the future. And every 5 years, we're going to be here saying, well, the next 5 years, what's it going to be like, right? And so there's issues where, for example, as one specific, in the United States, the accreditation entities that accredit colleges are not looking at employability as much as other factors, and they need to be looking at employability. If colleges, universities, and for-profit and nonprofit and government programs are nimble, if they're flexible, if they're quick, then whatever comes will come. The problem, of course, is when you're dealing with workforce development, you're dealing with government, right? And government's going to be slow. And I think that's ultimately one of the biggest problems that we have right now is that government's going to be slow, and this is not the time to be slow. Now, I'm not here on behalf of workforce development, so to be clear, but I actually serve for the state of Florida in the United States on the workforce development board. And so what we do is, again, not here officially in that capacity, but we divvy out tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to programs to retrain people or to train people in the beginning. So, for example, you have truck drivers, which truck driving is a great occupation right now. In fact, it's very in demand right now. But 15 years from now, it may not exist. And so, governments have to be aware that we just cannot be putting money into retraining for things that are not tech or advanced manufacturing or AI. That's the key, is that the government plays a huge role, billions and billions of dollars in America, that the government just has to be quicker and more nimble. Colleges have to be more quick and nimble, and businesses, I think, like these guys do, and my company does, we're able to change very quickly and supply people with education, but that's going to be very difficult going forward.
Okay. Your view on how do we prepare future workforce for jobs that don't exist yet?
I think it has to be bite-sized. Part of it, what Ethan was saying, I think we should have to take in kind of intervals of 5 years and focus on getting the fundamentals right, and then make sure that every 5 years, as Ethan was saying, we have to be nimble and continuously focus on developing and redeveloping the individuals. And as I said earlier, the key role in this has to be not played by government, not played by the company they work for. One of the shifts we are seeing, at least in Indian market, is that individuals are realizing this, that they have to invest in part of their continuous redevelopment. Till about 6, 7, 8 years back, this was not the story. When I started my career 20 years back working for an American company in India, it was the responsibility of the company to develop individuals. Once you join a company, the talent development team or the learning development team will make sure that if you are a top performer, you will be taken through the entire learning journey and making sure that you are the one who are taken care of. Now, individuals are aggressively keeping a part of their salary to make sure that they invest in their development and continuously upgrading themselves. I think that's a big shift in the new economy, in the millennials who are looking at that. And I think they will drive and they will tell us what to prepare for, because ultimately it's the market what decides.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So it used to be that people thought of train and pray.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea that train on something, whatever you like, whatever you want to do, you're a unique snowflake, and whatever you want to learn, let's train you on that. And the federal government in the United States would pay welfare, essentially. And welfare is the idea that you get a check as long as you're training for something. So in 2015, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is the main federal legislation in America, went into effect. And in 2015, we went to phase 2. And phase 2 says it's market-driven, and if the jobs don't exist in your local area, we're not paying for training for you, right? And so now it took until 2015, which makes you wonder what was going on, right? But in 2015, at least, this began phase 2, which is now it's market-driven. It's focused on what the skills are that you need for the jobs that are there, right? But moving on to phase 3, and that act expires actually in 2020, so it needs to be renewed in 2020 or 2021, and we'll see what the Trump administration decides to do. But now it's much more work-based learning, apprenticeships, things like that, where you're learning, you're getting a degree perhaps from college, you're getting industry certifications, which is incredibly important. You're also not going to leave with debt because you're already working and making money. And so, people are starting to take more ownership of that, especially with the freelance workforce. Freelance workforce basically says, you're your own boss, you own your own company, you better make sure that you have, as you were saying, you better make sure you've set aside some money for your own retraining and your own learning instead of depending on the government to do it for you. And I think that that's luckily a very good trend, that people are starting to understand that if I don't do it for me, nobody's going to. Right. And so I'm excited about that.
Okay. Andre, do you have a view on this?
Yeah, how to train somebody for something that we don't know.
Yeah.
So there are some skills that are valuable for any kind of situation. For instance, bravery, or run fast, or there are some skills, interpersonal skills. We see today very interesting things. I had some schools, K-12, and I see parents all the time coding, we need to teach coding for the kindergarten, for the elementary school. Very good. But these codings that we are teaching in 10, 15, 20 years will be useless. Okay, they can practice their brain, but they'll be useless. Oh, should train other language. Will be useless too, because the devices will be able to communicate with everybody. So the human relation is the only thing that really survived to the time challenge. If you go too deep in technology, and the schools are not prepared, the teachers have no clue how to teach technology. They do after-school programs for coding and robotics. It's fancy to go to competition. But all these things for the future, I don't know how impactful they really are. So I hope the predictions go to the bright side. Personally, I don't believe. I believe there will be scarcity, and when we have scarcity, people will fight to get what they need. So learn to fight is also very good. Yeah, all the skills, you never know what's going to happen, but the interpersonal skills are, in my opinion, the most important ones.
Okay. And can you describe, and anyone can take the first answer, solutions that or initiatives that you've seen that you think are going in the right direction, that are good at developing those future skills? Maybe it's your own companies, just examples of things that are good things.
Sure. So Purdue University and some others that we work with, they have separate programs called ISAs. And if you're not familiar with an ISA, it's an income sharing agreement. They really started in Europe and Australia, and they're starting to catch on in America. And the idea is that you don't pay tuition up front for a program, whether it's a college or a vocational program, whatever it is. You don't pay up front. You pay somewhere between 5 and 20% of your first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year income from your job to the school. So you don't pay the money up front. You just pay a percentage for the first few years, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years, depends on the program. And what that does is it basically says pay for performance, just like our companies. If we don't do a great job, we don't make money, right? And so the schools and the programs are starting to have these ISA programs, and it's great because it lets more students get in, it's better access for students and equality, but then also it makes the schools perform. And so I think that in and of itself is an incredibly positive, I don't know if you agree, Ben, you're more of an expert than I am certainly, but I think that that's really an enormously productive. Now, are they teaching you to run and fight and be brave? Maybe not, but certainly the interpersonal skills and those types of things. And the second thing I would say is online learning, right? You have to be able to learn online, and many students are just not used to that yet. Online learning allows you to reskill and upskill quickly. There's an interesting statistic. The United States Census data just came out, and it says that the lowest number of people have moved last year than ever before. Less people moved last year. 9% of people changed their address, which is the lowest that's ever happened. Now, there's a lot of factors for that. One of them is that students are graduating from college and moving home, and so they're not changing addresses, not moving around a lot. Also, people are able to telecommute now. They don't have to move. And other people just don't want to move. I think it's generational. They say, I like my life. I'm not going to move. I don't care how good the job is. I like this life. I think that's a generational problem. But because of that, if people want to stay where they are, online learning is going to have to fix that, right? Because if you're not going to go drive 200 kilometers to go to a different school to get upskilled, you can't do it. And so I think that online learning is a trend in general. I know that's a little bit more macro than what you're asking about. But on a micro trend, I think that the ISAs are going to fix a lot of this in a lot of places.
One of the things which is happening is that, picking on from where Ethan left, is that governments world over are recognizing online learning as a medium to get good jobs. Companies are recognizing online learning as a medium to get good jobs. Recently, about a year back, the Indian government published a notification, official notification, acknowledging the fact that if you have done online learning, you will be getting the same status of graduate or undergraduate as you would have done as in a normal full-time college. So that's a huge shift and a huge boost to the market of players like us who are playing in that market. Number one. Number two, I think the corporates, because when the government blesses it, corporates are making sure that they are the companies who are employing these people, they're also going ahead and ready to give the same status to the folks who are coming through that. And then the things like income sharing agreement, etc., come into play, because coupled with online learning, coupled with the recognition provided by the government and the enterprise, I think it becomes a potent combination, and that's the only way to go. Because in large countries, like US, India, China, geographically, it is not possible to have the faculty who knows machine learning in the remotest part of the country. And you have to make sure that every nook and corner of the country has people who get at least the opportunity to learn a machine learning, deep learning, AI, or any of the new courses which are coming up. And the only way you can reach that is using online learning, because you will neither have the faculty nor have the resources to make it happen.
Well, income sharing is a reflex of low enrollment in most cases. So when you cannot sell, you give credit to the people so they buy and pay later. That's the reality. Another thing is that the same disruption that the retail are having from Alibaba or Amazon, the online learning will destroy 95% of the universities, because they are totally outdated, except for some that have large endowments that will survive, but their model is completely obsolete and will not survive. They are dead. If you are going to university, go fast, because they will be an extinct animal.
I touched upon artificial intelligence and deep learning and digital twins. I mean, do you have a view on those technologies and how they're going to impact learning and future skills? I mean, I know it's hard to say, but what's your view? What's your take on it?
So let me take that one. I think they are a means to an end and not an end in themselves. So, for example, what we are focused on, as Benjamin was showing, that is to make sure that can we use AI and machine learning to enhance the experience of the student going through the learning process. For example, that whether it is the emotional, the behavior in the class, the engagement, measuring the entire learning outcome, how can we make sure that the student gets more engagement or a better learning experience using technology, whether it is AI, machine learning, or deep learning? Because a lot of time what happens is that, sorry to say that, but a lot of technologists, when they build companies, the assumption is that technology will solve all the problem. It will solve the sales problem, it will solve the operations problem, it will solve the management problem. So I think the key is, in a place like education, the learning experience and the engagement counts, which results in the ultimate outcome. So in my view, I think the AI, ML, etc. has to be used to drive engagement and experience learning and delivering a wow experience, which results in great outcome.
Yeah, I have a question for everyone. You can think about this. Would you rather have the best AI in education technology from 20 years in the future, but you can have it today? Or would you rather have Aristotle as your teacher with a piece of charcoal and a tablet, right? And which is what Alexander the Great had as his tutor, Aristotle. And the answer for most people is they'd rather have Aristotle and something to write with, right? And so, the human brain is uniquely set up for teaching and learning. And as much as AI is fantastic, and we do a lot of it, it's never going to fully replace the personalization, adaptability, and everything that a human brain comes with. And on the emotion and the motivation and all those things that you need. So here's what we do. I mean, here's my worldview, right? There's a balance between the human teacher and the technology, right? And just getting that percentage, turning that knob and those dials to get it exactly right, that's what we all need to be working on, right? So one of the things that we do is, you have your teacher. They can't walk around and deal with 25 students or more at all times. So the student's on a computer, but on the computer is another teacher with their face, it's a video, and the student can choose between their other teachers. Some go fast, some go slow, some are male, some are female. And so they've got a virtual co-teacher. And so the teachers love having these virtual co-teachers, because when the teacher's out sick, or when the student's at home, or when the teacher's busy talking to another student, this student has these other teachers. Now, we do it with real humans on video. Certainly, we've seen at this conference, and we saw on the screen, you can also fake it. Quite frankly, I don't see the need to fake it. I mean, I understand that they could speak in different languages, which is fantastic. But other than that, having a teacher who's recorded all the different videos of all the different things to do is really powerful. And I can tell you from data with many universities across the country doing analysis that the scores go up, the students are happier, and all those learning outcomes happen. And so giving students more teachers to choose from and using AI to help predict which is the best teacher for them at the right moment, that's what's more interesting. So it's combining the AI with the humans and just putting those together. And that's kind of what we work with, what I work on all day.
Andre, your view on AI and...
Yeah, the adults, because of the pressure of the marketplace, they will go and find what they need to learn, and they learn by themselves. But the kids, the children, they need to be guided. And this guidance process is the most important one. When he mentioned the tutoring, the possibility of having somebody following the student and provide the guidance they need is more important sometimes than the content. Content is important, but a bad content with a good teacher is wonderful. And a wonderful content with a bad teacher is terrible. So it's all about, if you want to transform the children into learners, we have to have the right incentive. And that can come from digital teachers, online teachers, of course from the family, but that's the only way to go. And not or package institutions that provide the same content for everybody in the same way.
We're almost reaching the end of the panel, so if there are any questions, please raise your hand and we'll give you a microphone. But just to conclude, I'd like each of the panelists to, if we were to make a prediction, basically, if we were here in 10 years, what we will talk about, what do you think will be the hottest topic?
I don't think AI is ever going to go away. I mean, I think we'll just get smarter and smarter, and I think that we'll continue to figure out the balance between humans and computers and robots. I mean, I think that's the world. Now, certain factories are certainly going to have 0 humans, maybe 1 human per factory, but as far as education is concerned, where motivation is required, I don't think in 10 years we're going to have much progress on true motivation for students.
Your prediction?
I think one of the things has to change and hopefully will change is using technology and AI, etc., to develop teachers. I don't think we do enough as today's world to focus the energy on developing teachers. A lot of things, a lot of presentations, everybody talks of developing students, student experience, etc. I think in my view, the realization would happen that teachers can't be replaced. They can be supported and supplemented. And I think time will come where there'll be companies sitting in this room who will be talking about making sure how do they develop teachers.
And just to comment on this, I think I fundamentally agree with this, because if you think of the macro challenges of education, you've got 1 billion net new entrants in the education system coming out of demography. And for that, you're never going to be able to find a solution that delivers schools or university for those people. And there is a huge shortage of teachers. So that's the 1 billion problem. And then you've got another billion problem, which is 1 billion people to reskill. And for that, you're going to need, to leverage trainers and teachers, I think.
And guides. I mean, the role of teacher is going to move to guide. I mean, that's what's going to happen, right? Yeah. And you'll have the AI, you'll have the computers, you'll have the technology, you'll have the videos of other teachers, but the local human being is going to be a guide. And the good news is that a guide scales a lot better than a teacher does, right? You can guide a lot more students than you can actually teach one-to-one. And so I personally think it's going to be somewhat linear. Like, as more and more, I don't think there's a precipice or we're going to fall off a cliff. we all realize the problem. We've heard about it at the conference from the Chinese government officials and such. I mean, I think everybody sees what's happening here, and I think everybody's on the right course. We may be 29 million people short of AI engineers in China over the next 5 or 6 years, but I have all the confidence in the world the Chinese government will find a way to get that many people. So I think we're all on the right track. I think we just got to keep doing what we're doing personally.
Okay. Andre, your prediction?
Yeah, very fast. My prediction is that we're going to be here in 10 years, hopefully. And we will be talking more or less the same thing, because the speed of change is faster and faster, but it's not as fast as the predictions. Oh, in 10 years, there's a driverless car, there is no school, there's everything online. 10 years is very close. 10 years is the day after tomorrow. So not many things will change in the speed that people imagine. But we are not preparing people for 10 years. We're preparing people for 30 years, 50 years.
So last question, very quickly, one word. If each of you had to teach one skill to your kid, what would be that skill?
I don't know why I have to go first.
One word, one skill.
One skill. Learning's not a skill, I guess, in this one. How to learn. I mean, I hyphenate it, so it's one word. How to learn.
Okay.
I think I'll go with interpersonal skills.
Yeah, personal skills is interpersonal.
That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. It's half an hour. It's not enough to talk about this, but hey, we had a good shot at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.